Right. Okay. So, yeah, thank you for letting me speak today, guys. Yeah, we're going to rush on. Just before we start, it's a great talk by Dan. Daniel's obviously got a lot of experience in aviation. I've been called up as a doctor before. I remember it was one of those 1 out of 12 where there was no real doctor on board. So I was doing my elective and I was going to Australia, and I was on my stopover in Dubai. And in between my stopover, so when I left the UK, I was a medical student. When I landed in Dubai, I opened my email and I found out that I'd passed my medical exams and I was now a medical doctor. Well, kind of. And then they put the call out on the next leg to Australia and said, is there a doctor on board? And they put out several calls, and I went up and I was like, literally, I've graduated about 3 seconds ago. And they were like, you are the most qualified person on this flight. Can you help out? So I helped a bit, but you know what? They didn't even upgrade me to first class afterwards. So what is even the point? But yes, I guess if they call you up, Daniel's spoken a lot about it, and yeah, he's got a lot more experience than me. But yes, let's crack on. I'm sure there's more stories that me and Dan can tell you later, but we'll crack on with this. So basically today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about this. You know, we're going to look at beautiful, graceful, steady astronauts to not so graceful people in space, in a manner of speaking. Before we get going, if you want to get involved, I'm going to throw in a few experiments as we go along today. So if you want to get involved, find yourself this ingredient list. We've got pen and paper. Find yourself a mate. If you've got someone at home, it's helpful. Fill a bag up full of heavy crap, and then you can use that later too. And get yourself some tea and biscuits because, yeah, I mean, we're on Zoom all day long, so it's probably nice to have some tea and biscuits. So before we get into the sciencey side of things, though, let's talk a little bit about me, because it's probably worth me telling you a bit about my journey. You know, most of you are med students, some of you are junior doctors, I think, and I was once one of you as well. And, you know, you might want to take your medical career down an unconventional path. And pretty much everyone I know in the space sector is unconventional. So this kind of thing might be interesting for you. So this is me, where it all began. I was the person on the right. I would kill to have hair like that again. But the bow tie and plastic belt combo will probably tell you that I hadn't really figured myself out just yet. So cut forward a few years, I was at school, I was into movies, I'd made a mockumentary ripping off David Attenborough's stuff. And, you know, I did my A-levels, which were biology, Latin, and design and technology. You know, 3 subjects which go together, as well as toothpaste and orange juice, I suppose. But putting it all together, I was going to go to uni, and I thought I would do the only logical thing as a degree, which was Egyptology. That's right, I studied Egyptology, which is the study of ancient Egypt. I thought it was going to be amazing. I thought it was going to be like Stargate, Indiana Jones, pyramids, curses, booby traps, all of that. But it wasn't. It was this. It was a pottery sherd in the middle of the ground from the 13th dynasty, and the lecturers were highly interested in it, but it was rubbish. Now, some parts of the degree were cool. Learning the language was fun. I could go to the British Museum and chat up girls by pointing at hieroglyphs and saying, these hieroglyphs say you have beautiful eyes. But, you know, apart from being social and teaching me about field methods and techniques, which is actually something that I've taken forward. So lesson 1, even things that you don't really like, you can take those skills forward and use them another time. But it wasn't really interesting enough for me. So I thought I would transfer. And at UCL, you can transfer your degree. And I found something really interesting called human sciences. Now, some of you actually in the audience might be doing human sciences. And a lot of people do it before they do medicine. But this is a degree for people who don't know what they want to do. And it was brilliant. So in the first year, you know, there's a bunch of compulsory modules from physiology and anatomy to geography and psychology. But in year 2 and 3, you basically choose whatever you want in the whole of university, as long as it relates to humans, which is anything. And that's pretty amazing. So some students would design their course meticulously around their interests, which is like a specialized degree. I don't really see the point in that. I just chose modules which had really cool names. So I did like the eye and the brain, advanced immunology, history of medicine, geology of planets and solar systems. Like I can guess humans live on a planet. And this one which was space medicine and extreme environment physiology. Now, how can you look at a title like that and not do it? It covered some amazing, awesome things, and it showed that there was more to science than what I had originally thought. For me, this was a crucial degree because not only was it really interesting, but it was meeting a particular lecturer who went on to become a bit of a mentor. And I'm sure a lot of you will probably recognize him, Kevin Fong, Mr. Space Medicine himself. He's now all over TV. He's probably filming something in the Arctic at the moment. But back in 2007, instead of inspiring millions, he was inspiring about 30 students in a small UCL lecture theatre. And I was well out of my depth. You know, I was a third-year human scientist, not having done physiology, jumping into a physiology degree. And as a random human scientist, you know, I was a little bit stuck. But he helped me out, and so did some of the other guys. And I stuck with him. And years later, I got in touch with him, and he became someone who helped me into medical school. He became a mentor, and he actually became my boss. So lesson 2 here is that people you meet along the way can help you take your journey forward in ways that you might have never thought it could take you forward. So don't be worried about contacting people for advice or a coffee or a chat. You know, maybe don't ask them for a job or some money, but you can always get in touch with people. And maybe even today, you might have a mentor. It might be me, it might be Daniel, if you're into retrieval, it might be one of the astronauts later, who knows? You're at UCL, use it and use your network and just be bold and go out there. Anyway, I came out of my degree and I thought I would make the next logical step in my career. So I started working in movies, and this, well, it's not as sideways as you think. I'd be pretty into science, but I've been pretty into movies as well since I made those mockumentaries when I was at school. And the year before I graduated, I made this movie called Dark Knight, which is one of the most terrifying horror movies you will ever see. And by the way, I made it before that Chris Nolan made a film with the same name, so he ripped me off. Anyway, went to some film festivals and it did quite well. And after I came out of my degree, I started to get headhunted into movies. So I started to make movies at the micro-budget British film industry, which is up to about $2 million, which isn't really that much. But, you know, I worked on that kind of stuff. I worked on some BBC stuff. I worked on some Hollywood films. I even got fired off Harry Potter, but that's a story for another time. And years later, I would come back to making movies and start making stupid science videos as well, like this one.
If you're on a diet, space is pretty good because you tend not to eat nearly as much as you need to. And you can buy my book about space diets at all reputable dealers now, only $29.99.
Anyway, so, you know, subscribe to my channel. That's the point. I'm a YouTuber now, so like, subscribe, smash the bell, do everything you're supposed to do. Stealth Health on YouTube is definitely the best channel. Please go take a look. But honestly, if you're interested in space medicine, I did a movie called Space Medicine for Beginners, which is a pretty long movie, which goes through a lot of different things, and it's designed specifically for you. So all of you should subscribe, and I can see who's here today and I can see who's subscribed. So, you know, if you don't do it, you won't get your certificate of attendance. Anyway, lesson 3 is that my old skills have gone full circle to merge with my new career. So, you know, and now every video I make, it's fun and it's led to a cool opportunity, each one of them. And I love doing it. My hobby is becoming my job. So things that you've done in the past can always come back into the future, and you can merge them together in really cool ways. Anyway, I got demoralized in film because I made one particular movie for a year, which went on and they screwed me over. So I did another logical choice. And I thought, you know what, I will seamlessly transition into medicine. So the applications were going in, I threw mine in, I got an interview at UCL, and basically the interview, they asked me, where did you do your undergrad? I said I did it at UCL, and they said, you're in, fantastic. So I'm sure a lot of you have had those similar interviews as well on your way to med school, but that was it. I was on my way to becoming a doctor. But in case you haven't realized, I don't really like sitting around. I don't like doing just the conventional things. I like challenging myself and taking opportunities. So as a med student and as a doctor now, I've pursued things. I've pursued things that have come to me which are interesting. And so the first was research, and a lot of research is boring. And I used to think that too, but I did my research at the top of the Alps. Now, some of you will have heard of this project, Extreme Alps, or its bigger brothers, Extreme Everest 1, Extreme Everest 2, but it was pretty awesome. You know, apart from altitude sickness and gastroenteritis, it was super cool. I got some nice views. I met some really good people. We did some really fun research. I got my bloods taken. I rode a bike. I blew into a tube. I drank beetroot juice that was rancid for 2 weeks solid. And I even was able to get the world record for playing the highest game of handball in the world. I was 2-0 up, and then the ball blew off a cliff 2,000 meters into Italy, but it still counts. Anyway, about 10 years later, we published some research, and in a nutshell, this was, does drinking beetroot juice turn you into a Sherpa? And the answer is obviously no, it doesn't. But it was still fun research to do. And if the sound's working, here's a pretty cool video, because I thought I would, research for medicine would just be in a lab or something. But this was my view.
If you want to know what it feels like to be in Up, that movie, check this out. This is the view out the second floor of our window. Those are 60-mile-an-hour winds. There you go. Look at that. Let's go over here. Out the other side. So Martin, again. Here is the sunset out this window with the Matterhorn just over there.
Pretty cool stuff. Now, Extreme Alps was put together by an organisation based out of UCL called CASE, the Centre for Altitude, Space and Extreme Environment Medicine. And later, I would go on to become the Aerospace Development Director there. But before that, I picked their brains about how to get more experience in extreme physiology. Remember what I said earlier about who you know and your network being able to point you in different directions. So, oh, by the way, I should say, you guys are into expedition medicine, and you should definitely get involved with World Extreme Medicine, or WEM. That's your ticket to a vast network of people. And I'm sure if you don't know about that, the society here will put you in touch with them as well. But I went to Duke University, where they have one of the biggest hyperbaric research chambers in the world, and a lot of history there as well. It's pretty cool, lots of steel, lots of pressure, pretty cool stuff. Got to check it out for a week, and that was just a nice experience. I've also done a bit of pre-hospital medicine. I've been lucky enough to get a bit of experience with East Anglian Air Ambulance, and I even did my elective at MedStar in Adelaide. It was pretty awesome, amazing fun. I got to see more of Australia than probably most Australians do, whilst doing a bit of ICU and transfers at altitude and looking at some shark attacks. I'm not going to go into detail on this because Daniel's already covered it really, really well. And then, of course, I've honed my extreme focus in recent years into the discipline which we're talking about today, and the one I find most interesting and inspiring, which is space medicine. Now, there's no official elective to NASA. You have to kind of fight your way there. But I did find about the most amazing course that does exist and is open to pretty much all of you in the crowd for aspiring space medics. It's the Principles of Space and Aviation Medicine, or the PASM. Now, this is run at the University of Texas along with NASA, and it was a month of the most incredible lectures and by some of the most inspiring people I've ever had the privilege to meet. We had unprecedented access to NASA. We went to Johnson Space Center. We went to the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. We got to sit in shuttles. We got to try loads of stuff out. And I got to meet some amazing people. I met the woman who's now set up the space branch in New Zealand. So I met the guy who set up in Norway. Tara, who's speaking later, is now the medical director at Virgin Galactic. These are really, really cool people, and people who are just into space. You'll love it. Now, if you're a final year medical student or a junior doctor or even a senior doctor, this course is open to you. I'm afraid it's not open to you, I believe, if you're not a medic. But I cannot recommend it highly enough. And that runs for 1 month every year. And obviously I couldn't be here at this kind of conference without talking about, there's a bit of expedition medicine we do too. Now, the expedition world, as I'm sure some of you know, is full of fun, interesting, awesome people, people who aren't too bothered about the wards or GP practices, and people that they look up and they're happy. They're not looking at their phone. They're not studying medicine the whole time. It's really good. The more expedition stuff you do, the richer your life will be. Oh, and I'm also an NHS doctor. That's boring. Anyway, that's me in a nutshell. What I'm saying is live your life and do cool things. And being a doctor or a medic allows you to do a ton of those cool things. So that's me in a nutshell. That's the inspiration bit. And I guess I came here today because you want me to talk about space. And that's kind of the point of today. So let me change topic massively. And I'll tell you about the neurovestibular system in space. Now, don't think of this as like a heavy lecture, like we're going to go through some stuff. This is fun, this is breezy, don't think too hard about it. Just take it in, you know, and we'll start with some of the boring stuff. You've seen this before. This is the inner ear. Wow, right? It's got the smallest bones in the human body. It's got the cochlea where the sound is made into hearing, and it's got semicircular canals, which are complete with vestibular complexes, which contain receptors for our sense of equilibrium. Now, this bit down here, this contains membranous sacs called the utricle and the saccule. Don't believe me? This is what they are. Here they are. And you have these things. Now, these are how the whole utricle and saccule thing work. You basically have a gel area with some nerves inside it and some stones on top of it. So when you move your head around, if you move it forward or up or down or whatever, these stones move due to gravity, like going on here, and that moves the gel, which then moves the nerves, which means that you get a nerve signal, so you know that your body's moving. Now, the utricle is horizontal stuff. So that's like, you know, when you're in a car or a train and it starts and you feel that horizontal motion, and if you bend over to pick up a box, you'll get it. The saccule is vertical. So if you're in a lift, for example, and it goes down, you'll feel that feeling in your inner ear, and that's how you know you're going up or down. Then behind the vestibule is this third portion of the bony labyrinth known as the semicircular canals. They're responsible for detection of head motion in 3 planes, you know, anterior, forward and backwards, up and down, left and right, X, Y, and Z. Each canal contains a semicircular duct where we pick up angular momentum. So at the base of it, you've got this cupula, which is another jelly thing filled with all those hairs. And around it is this fluid called endolymph. I'm sure some of you know about this. As you spin around, it's going to move this back and forward, and it's going to tell your brain that you're moving in a certain direction. And if you've got X, Y, and Z figured out, you can kind of figure out where your head is in space. Now, when it comes to aviation and space, we think about X, Y, and Z more in terms of roll, pitch, and yaw, and that's how we're moving. Now, we've all done this before, and in fact, if you're a bit bored sitting down at the moment, you want to stretch your legs, stand up, spin yourself around, and you get dizzy. And why do you get dizzy? Because that endolymph carries on moving after you stop. So this thing carries on being pushed this way until things settle down, and that's dizziness. As a side note, by the way, when you get drunk, alcohol enters the cupula and it's less dense than the endolymph, which makes it float. And that floatiness means that it thinks that you're moving when you're not moving, and that's why your room spins. So there's some pub quiz knowledge for you right there. Then we move on to the slightly more complicated stuff. We're going to get to the central things. Now, as we've all seen, the vestibular system, as you saw just now, is designed to work around gravity. So take that forward when we're thinking about space. We're designed to work around gravity. We keep upright to keep the horizon horizontal, so we know where you are. Look at this dude. He's traveling like 100 miles per hour, but his head is tilted to keep the horizon horizontal. Now, this is a powerful and quick reflex, and it's a reflex you don't even know that's going on until it stops working. And, you know, when you're a doctor, you might see cases of vertigo, but of course, in space, it's totally screwed. And you get cases of space motion sickness, which I'm sure the astronauts will tell you about later. It's like seasickness on steroids. So here's your central system. Remember this? No, me neither, but it's a brain. So the point is, it's complicated, and you feel smarter having seen a side like this. You have what we call the vestibular ocular reflex, or the VOR. Okay, this is the reflex where activation of the vestibular system causes eye movement. It's there to stabilize images on your retina during head movements by providing eye movements in the opposite direction. So if your head moves to the left, your eyes move to the right. And so if you try that now, so move your head, like shake your head as if you're saying no, but keep focused on me and my presentation, you'll see that your head moves left, your eyes move right, your head moves right, your eyes move left to keep everything on the screen and keep everything in focus. That is a vestibular ocular reflex. Here's the pathway. You do need to know it for your med school exams, and then you will never need to know it again. So here it is again. And you can try it again. So what I'm going to say is hold your finger up in front of your face and just shake your head, move your head around and keep your finger in focus, okay? There is a VOR for every head movement you're doing, and it's constantly in use. Now, they can be big or they can be small. So if you look at your finger and you shake your head around, that's some pretty big movements that your eyes are making. But if you look out the window and you look at a house across the street, or if you're watching this from your chalet in France, look at the mountains in the distance, you know, there are tiny movements to keep that in focus, because your head is shaking a little bit and you're not so stable. But those tiny VORs are keeping everything in focus as well. When it breaks down, there are issues, and people have big pathology if they have a real problem with it. But it's also a reason why, you know, you can't stabilize your eyes when you're drunk, because things are moving all over the place. And you can break your VOR too. So if you did get that pen and paper earlier, try walking around and writing at the same time, and then try reading it while walking around as well. You're overloading the system. It's not so easy. And you can also break your system with mismatches, and mismatches are the ones that we're really interested in at the moment. So some of you will know this. This is the Blair Witch Project. This made people sick in the cinema. And why did it do that? Well, it was because of mismatches. It gave the illusion of movement. So people were sitting completely still in the cinema, and their stationariness was telling them they were not moving. But on the screen, things were shaking around, which told them things were moving, and that made them sick. Similarly, if you go to seasickness and you're under the deck, you'll see that your eyes are telling you that you're sitting still because the walls aren't really moving compared to you, but your inner ear is moving all over the place because of the waves, and you get sick. And speaking of sickness, I'm going to change that slide. There's a bunch of other reflexes too. Here's a nystagmus pathway. Here's vestibular spinal to keep you upright. Here's some muscle tension you've got for posture. Here's the vestibular colic reflex, which keeps your neck in the right place. Owls are wicked at this. Check this dude out. And yeah, also the weird guy that's holding it. I find him very strange. But owls, vestibular colic, there's no finer animal in the world. And who's this? If you have into your cartoons, you'll know this is Miss Cerebellum from the Powerpuff Girls. She's designed to look like a cerebellum. See, the Powerpuff Girls was a smarter cartoon than you gave it credit for. But why are we talking about this? Well, basically, the vestibular nucleus is multisensory. Okay, the VOR changes depending on other inputs, and you can calibrate it over time. So after a while, the body recognizes there is a mismatch, and it gets calibrated. So if something is consistently wrong, we can adjust to it. That's why when we remove gravity, space motion sickness starts and then eventually stops. It doesn't happen forever, because your cerebellum realizes that, you know what, let's just ignore those inputs. In a similar way, you may have seen experiments where people put on these prism glasses to flip the world upside down. And after a few days, they can just see completely normally again, because your body has adapted. When things go inconsistently wrong, so when there's like a loose stone in your semicircular canals, which sometimes settle and sometimes don't, you can't adapt to it, and that's vertigo. If someone has a cerebellar problem, so that means the processing is shot. Now that is incurable. That doesn't get any better. So we test that in medicine. If you're a student and you do your neuro exams looking at stroke stuff, we do coordination with the cerebellum, because if there's a stroke in the cerebellum, you have a problem with things like balance and perception. It's difficult to explain this properly in a PowerPoint. If only there was some slick, amazingly shot video which told you everything you need to know about space medicine. Go to YouTube, go to Stealth Health channel, watch this video here, Space Medicine for Beginners. You can even find out about climate change, and you can even find out about hangovers and how to avoid them. So anyway, let me get back on topic. Speaking of getting hangovers and getting drunk, it affects your balance. So we get back to standing upright. So if you are at home, stand up. And if you're with someone else, get them to stand up and look at them as well. Watch how people are swaying. It's actually impossible to stand still. You just can't do it. You're always moving a little bit. Now, your center of mass, just behind your belly button, constantly moves a little bit, and you get loads of input from your ankle joint and other joints. And then we have this postural sway, and your cerebellum modulates how sensitive the reflex are. So if you stand on one leg, you're going to sway more. If you put your feet close together, you'll sway a fair bit. And if you have a wide base, then you have maximal stability. So you'll also see people who have cerebellar problems, they walk with a really wide base because it helps them stay upright. And if people lose perception in their ankle joints and things like that, they will also do the same thing to give them the best help they can. So you can only hope to be as good as this elephant, but posture is maintained even before there is a frank failure of posture. So we are actually able to anticipate issues and then guard against it. So here's another little experiment. If you're with someone else, get them to stand up and give them a push. I mean, don't push them to the ground, but give them a push. And they will know it's coming and they will adapt back to it and they will keep their balance. If you don't have anyone with you, just stand near the wall and push the wall. And because you know you're going to push the wall, you're kind of going to adapt and you're probably not going to fall over. You can do another experiment. If you've got that heavy, heavy bag that I said earlier, give it to the person who you're with. Now, immediately what you'll see and what they will be unaware of is that they have probably leant to one side to counteract the balance of that heavy bag. They know it's going to be heavy, that keeps it going. If I was with you right now, I would totally troll you by giving you an identical bag, pretending it's really heavy, but actually it's super light. So before I give it to you, you've already started to lean. I'll give you the light bag and you expect that to kind of balance yourself out, but it's really light, so you're actually going to fall over. So I control your guarding of how to maintain your posture. Try it with your friends and family. Let's talk about spatial orientation. We're going to blitz through this as well. Like I say, this is just a bit of fun today, but just give you some key things. If your brain wants you to do something, in order for you to do that, you need to do three things. One, you need to know where in space you are to start with. Two, you need to know what the movement you want to do is. And three, you then need to recheck things after you've moved to make sure you've moved the way you wanted to. Simply put, it looks like this, but whatever, we're not going to go into detail on that today. We'll summarize it though by having a look at this. The key thing here is, and this is the big key here, is that in space, your eyes work, but nothing else does. Well, some things do, but we're going to say nothing else does. And it's not like they're shutting off, okay? They're not Control-Alt-deleting your position sense or anything like that. They are still working, but they are not working properly. They rely on gravity. Those stones move with gravity. Your semicircular canals move with gravity. Your positional sense is gravity dependent, and you don't have gravity. So they're giving you the wrong information, and that's a mismatch. So in space, you have to adapt. Look at this experiment. This is some astronauts walking on a treadmill. So this is them going up and down as they're walking on the treadmill, and they're keeping their head position still. And you can see before they fly, they're pretty good at keeping everything going. When they come back, they're bloody awful. And you can imagine that they're not going to be very good at keeping things too steady. And so when they go to space, coordination is rubbish, and then it adapts. But then when they come back from space, coordination becomes rubbish again. Coordination and perception. So look at this, like which one of these is longer? And I know they're both the same. You probably know they're both the same, but think about these split-second decisions you're making. Let's think about landing a space shuttle and depth perception. A long, narrow runway versus a short, wide runway. They might look the same. I don't know if this comes across over Zoom, but which way is the train going? Because of gravity on all of us, we are able to detect that translational acceleration, like what I spoke about earlier when you're in a train and it starts moving. But if you think about this and a static head tilt, so bending your head down to pick up the box, that is the same sensory input into your brain. But you need to differentiate them. And we solve this problem on Earth because we have multiple inputs explaining which one of those inputs was the right one to choose. But if you lose all the other inputs, which one do you trust? Which one do you go with? So the inner ear sends signals to the vestibular nucleus, and it has signals from the midbrain optic flow, which is basically when you look at the entire visual field and just kind of take it in the background. So at less, I should say, than 1 to 2 hertz, the vestibular system is ineffective, or movement less than 2 degrees per second. Acceleration is too slow to elicit an effect for you. So you can't differentiate things between movement and the optic flow. So that's why if you sit on a train and another train next to you starts moving, but then you're like, wait a second, are they moving or am I moving? You don't know who's moving until you go fast enough to realize that, oh, I should be feeling something, or oh, I'm feeling something. That's because the hertz, the motion isn't fast enough for you to realize it just yet. And so that leads us to some other illusions. So less than 2 degrees of movement. And if you're turning your plane and banking it, say to the left, if it's slow, like less than 2 degrees, you won't know that you're moving to the left. And then when you look out the window and you're like, oh, bloody hell, you turn back. But because you're turning back fast, everything pushes your circular canals and things like that to the right, telling you, my God, I've really gone to the right, plus. And so you go, right, I need to correct that. And you turn left again because you think that's going to sort the problem out. But actually, you never turn right in the first place. You are only going left. And now you're going even more left. And that leads to what we call a graveyard spiral. So pilots used to die, and some probably still do, but not very often anymore, because of this illusion and messing up of your vestibular senses. So as a pilot, you learn that you can't really trust your own senses, especially if you're in clouds or something like that. I mean, look at this. Where is the horizon? That's why pilots use their instruments. But of course, if you can't read your instruments in the first place, that's when Die Hard 2 happens. But think about what we said earlier, okay? So those things, those head movements, the inability to track things just for a few seconds, that can make all the difference. Here's another illusion for you. It's the Coriolis illusion. So if you bank a plane and then look down abruptly, you're going to be activating 2 semicircular canals at once. Now, this can also happen in artificial gravity, and we'll touch on that really quickly at the end. But this leads to massive disorientation. And we'll do an experiment now, and I know you've all signed your health and safety waiver, so be careful when you do this. But if you stand up, and if you're with someone else, just put your arms around them while they do it. But if you stand up now at home, and what I want you to do is shut your eyes and just spin around a few times. So just spin with your eyes shut, but your head upright, okay? And if you do that, and now you open your eyes, you'll see that the room is a little bit dizzy, but you should have recovered pretty fast. And now you should be feeling all right. We'll do the same thing again, but instead of activating one of your semicircular canals, we're going to do 2 of them. So shut your eyes again, but this time also put your ear to your shoulder. Now you spin around. So spin. And now open your eyes again, and you should feel a lot dizzier than you were before. Hopefully it's corrected. Hopefully you haven't fallen over. But that is because you are having 2 semicircular canals active. Now that is a Coriolis issue, and that is a major issue which we might talk about a bit later. So again, fun things to do with your friends and family. Quickly, we'll touch on gaze. This is hugely important for humans, your head and your eyes. It's important for seeing things, but it also has a psychosocial and emotional response as well. People with autism or schizophrenics, they have different gaze movements and things don't quite look right. Social bonding, baby and an adult, elicits human hormonal responses with those longer eye contacts. You can see this in dogs as well. Dogs are always looking at you and you're always looking at dogs. Look at this little dog. Look at this little dog in the eyes, okay? That should be making you feel so warm and fuzzy on the inside. And here's an experiment we do on astronauts and other people as well. This is gaze. So here is head position in the red. And then we've got eye position in the green. And what happens is you sit on a chair and the head is still, but these lights come on at various degrees away from you. And the idea is you look at those, you turn your head to look at those lights, and we can monitor that. So what normally happens is the light comes on, and like the vestibular ocular reflex earlier, your head turns one way, your eyes turn the other way, and you focus on something. You normally overshoot it a bit, which is what this bit is, normally once, and then things settle out and become really, really nice and easy. So that's what should happen. This is what happens in astronauts. So this is the normal thing. So before they go this way, you know, the head goes this way, the eyes go this way, and your gaze has one correction and then is nice and steady. And this takes about half a second. Now, after flight, they do it, and look what's going on here. They're all over the place until things kind of settle off, about a second and a half. Now, that might not seem very much, but a second and a half, if you need to make a snap decision, landing a shuttle or doing something when you get to Mars, that can make all the difference. Proprioceptive senses, they're also gone. You can talk to astronauts about how their limbs move all over the place when they're asleep and where they don't quite know where they are. Some people strap themselves down. And again, you can see how the balance and the sway is off. So earlier on, when you were standing up and you were swaying, you know, that's what this is here. These are normal sway patterns. When you come back from space, you're all over the place because you can't trust some of the receptors and you're still learning how to get back to it. Now, sometimes people ask you, how do you translate this back to the real world? You know, what is space medicine? You need to translate it to the real world. Well, this is the real world. This is, as people get older, they get more ataxic. They tend to fall over. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but part of it is because the neurovestibular system starts to work less well. So if we can figure out how to sort your neurovestibular system out, we might be able to help people who are falling over quite a lot as well. And that can help stop this. So what is this? As you get older, I mean, you get a massive ball sack down there, but also you fall over and you break your hip. Hip fractures, they cost about £1.1 billion a year in the UK. It's normally seen as like a 6-month death sentence almost, like about 50% of people don't do very well off the back of this. And wouldn't it be nice if we could figure out this and how to stop it? So let's talk quickly about what we can do about stuff and what we're learning from space and what we need to do when we go into deep space, which is the next step forward. So countermeasures. So here's a quick thing. Basically, a lot of stuff can go wrong in space, okay? And although some people have said in the past that neurovestibular system is only part of it, what we're really beginning to learn now is that neurovestibular stuff is also important for physiological systems like respiration, cardiovascular, circadian, bone. Everything is related. So what we need to do is get on top of everything. So some people say deep brain stimulation can shut off the sensory neural component in your inner ear so you won't get sick. It's not sci-fi. That kind of thing is actually beginning to happen now, so that's pretty cool. But artificial gravity is really where we need to go. This works for pretty much everything. Not everything that happens in space, but quite a lot of things from a physiological point of view. We could do something like linear acceleration. That's when you get faster and faster and faster and basically push yourself to the back. But the problem there is that you have to it's linear. So you have this uniform acceleration one way, but then to decelerate, you basically need to decelerate at the same pace. So that's going to take you a long time because although you might get somewhere fast, then you need to slow down at the same rate you sped up. So it'll take the same time. And if you stopped abruptly, so if you got somewhere and then stopped, you'd smash forward like a fly on a windscreen. So that's probably not very good for anyone. On a separate note, there is a new book by Andy Weir, the guy that wrote The Martian. If you like that book, he's written a new book which has just come out called Hail Mary. I would recommend that to anyone who is interested in space engineering and space medicine. It's called Hail Mary and it is fantastic. So check that out. It's a really good read. And if you have Audible, the audiobook is even better than the book because they've done a lot of work to it. So that is one where I would say get the audiobook instead. Anyway. Rotational space vehicles, yes, they work. And you've seen that in sci-fi movies. In fact, here's a video of research from the 70s. People were doing that. We were trying to figure it out. We were trying to do these rotational vehicles to keep gravity. And here's an astronaut in training trying to do it. I'll just cut to this and then we'll cut away. And where is he? Oh, he's taking his time. We're going to move on. So this is what we can do. But again, there are logistical problems for this. So if we want to simulate the gravity on Earth, so we want to have 1 G of gravity, well, you either need to build a spaceship which is 1.8 kilometers long and rotates once a minute, which is massive from an engineering point of view, or you build it 10 meters long and rotate it 30 times per minute, which is basically like being in a washing machine. And probably no one really wants that. You also have what we said earlier, the Coriolis effect is a problem here. And you don't ever see this in the movies because it's too complicated. But if you get into one of these devices and you walk in plane with the way things are spinning, no problem. But the moment you turn to the side and walk to the computer at like 90 degrees to the way you're moving, you're going to get two of your semicircular canals going, and you are going to get as sick as you got when you span around earlier. You probably won't be able to do your job. So this isn't that great. Now, maybe we can do other things, okay? So maybe we can do lower G. Maybe we can do it just for a short time. And, you know, maybe we can do short radius stuff like this is. So maybe it's just a short time for just a little bit, can help with your bones and all that kind of stuff. We actually tried this with Skylab. So here's like a cycle thing, which they did for like half an hour a day. This did have some beneficial effects. We've also thought about putting on centrifuge accommodation. So here's one of the modules cancelled in 2005. Here's another Nautilus X module cancelled 2011. But hopefully we'll be getting to the stage when we're doing it soon. The other question you need to ask yourself is, do you need Earth gravity or do you just need partial gravity? If you go to the moon, gravity is only 0.16 G. So maybe you only need to do that. If you go to Mars, it's only 0.38 G. So if you're going to go to Mars and not come back, which, you know, if they're going to do long-term Mars, Elon Musk kind of stuff, you know, you ain't coming back. You don't need to get 1 G on your body. You need to get 0.38 G. Although nobody knows what that's going to do to other organ systems, because even though you're going to be good when you get there, for 0.38 G, your body has grown up in 1 G, and you might have cardiovascular issues and stuff. We just don't know yet. Some people say use magnets. It doesn't really work. I mean, you can stick yourself to the ceiling, but it's not actual gravity unless you're Wolverine. It also shakes the shit out of your spacecraft, so don't do that. Some people talk about diamagnetism. Oh, like this frog. It's not really moving here, but he floats around because it's about moving water. But it works for a frog because they're full of water. It probably doesn't work for us. J.J. Abrams will tell you it's all to do with red matter, but that doesn't exist. And then this guy, Eugene Podklentov, he said that string theory and electromagnetism unite in a hidden dimension called paramagnetism, where that creates artificial gravity. He published his stuff, but he said he's not going to tell anyone how he's actually done it, lest they be criticized by the mainstream scientific community. I think it turns out he's probably nuts. But what I'm saying is, we need to find some way to do artificial gravity going forward. Anyway, that is an intro, a real quick whistle-stop tour about neuromedicine in space for you. It essentially messes you up, and it messes you up when you go, and it messes you up when you come back, and you kind of adapt in between. But you need to think about these deep space missions. If you're going to be landing on a planet, landing somewhere else without help from Earth, you're going to need to be in tip-top condition. How can we make that happen? This is why I love space medicine, because it's really interdisciplinary. It's not just medicine, it's engineering, it's chemistry, it's all kinds of things, and it's fantastic. And we're solving the problems, but we're not solving the problems necessarily on a tiny, tiny little scale. We're solving it on a big scale. And at the very least, I hope I've taught you enough today that you know what's happening with this really cute child to finish on this. Anyway, that was me. Thank you so much for watching. This is me. You can subscribe. I'm going to tell you one more time, YouTube/Stealth Health. Follow me on Instagram at The Stealth Doctor. Reach out if you want to know anything else. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dan. Honestly, it was absolutely amazing. We did want to say that we have until 3 o'clock, we were hoping, for some questions. If anybody does want to take their break in their time, they're more than welcome to. But those of you that would like to stay and ask questions through the Q&A, we have until 3. So if that's okay with you, Dr. Dan.
Yeah. Anything, go for it. Let me have a look at what's been going on. But yeah, call them out if you want to.
Hi, Dan. Dr. Dan, first of all, thank you so much for the presentation. I've learned a lot. So my question is in regard to the topic of social prescribing. So I'm not sure if you heard that term before. So let me give you some context. So my name is Aaron. I'm a pharmacist, but I specialize on pharmacy social prescribing. And because I'm organizing a conference in April, I'm trying to merge my passion for social prescribing and my futurist side on how would social prescribing look like in 100 years. And that's why I had different topic coming up in my mind being, for example, how it would look like in the metaverse. But another strong topic was I was really keen on was space. How would the social prescribing sector look like with low Earth orbit population, and how would socialization experienced by astronaut could be magnified with population living in spaceship with SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin. So I was just keen to hear your side of it.
Yeah, interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of social prescribing in space before, but I mean, we do it, right? So, you know, social prescribing is all about treating people in the community. So try not to treat them with like hardcore medicine. Basically, that tends to be nutrition and that tends to be diet and exercise. So when we go to space, we do that. So I didn't talk about it today, and this is you'll hear about it later, I'm sure, from some of the astronauts. But this is you know, you have to do countermeasures to solve the bone loss and to solve muscle loss and things like this. You need your diet to be on point so you don't get kidney stones and that kind of thing. So I wouldn't say social prescribing would work like it does on Earth, but I would say we're already doing it because we tell astronauts they need to get exercise every day. They need to follow certain diets every day, and that prevents illness. So this is preventative healthcare. Obviously, if you want to find out about more, it's all in my video. Go subscribe. But yeah, the guys later will talk about it. So you can call people up and ask them about, you know, how do they maintain bone mass in space? How do you maintain muscle mass? How do you not get kidney stones? These are all good questions for later.
Thank you, Dan.
So if I look through the Q&A, did you do your research project through UCL Medicine? It wasn't through UCL Medicine per se, it was at UCL, at the Centre for Altitude, Space and Extreme Environment Medicine, but there is a lot of research going on all the time. And UCL, I found, are very open. If you can find the right supervisor, you can often run your own stuff. But there is every year, or normally every year, the European Space Agency, and that's you guys in Europe should totally be looking at this. You know, every 3 years. Unfortunately, you just missed it this time. So in 3 years' time, they'll be offering internships and jobs again. I think internships might be every year actually, and that's a great thing for anyone who wants to just take a year out. And you can always you can take a year out, and you can work at the European Space Agency. They also run experiments on their Vomit Comet, on the plane that goes up and down and gives you like zero gravity for like 30 seconds. I think our next speaker is going to talk about that as well. But if you have research you want to do, you can submit it and you can get it onto that. And space is multidisciplinary with lots of different people working on it. So you want to work in a team. So although we are at UCL, branch out. You know, there is decent space stuff going on at King's, at Exeter, at Swansea, and a variety of other places. The bigger, more awesome your team is, the better. So yeah, that's that one. First year medical students, how to get involved in space expedition medicine. Well, space, I'd go on the PASM if you can, but you need to take a month out, which is difficult to make happen at medicine, but you can try. But I would advise anyone to go on a World Extreme Medicine course. Their expedition medicine course, it's like 4 days. They are absolutely brilliant. You'll meet a ton of people who are super interesting, and it gets you into the expedition world. What else have we got?
Dr. Dan, do you mind if I ask a question? I'm not sure if it's on the Q&A, but I did write it earlier.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, do you think that humans will, or if they have the capacity to evolve their brains so that they can adapt quicker to these changes in gravity? So returning from space or going to space, if they can, you know, adjust their coordination after they lose it in a quicker way.
Yeah, that's a cool question. Yeah, I mean, in a sense, yes, they can do immediate adaptation. So we already know when we do like coordination tests and balance tests on astronauts, the veteran astronauts are better than the rookies. You know, they have learned, their brain does adapt quicker. So you have immediate adaptation. That's good. Certainly, it'll be really interesting to see what happens when people evolve in space. So if you start breeding on Mars or in deep space, you know, there's going to be a whole new set of things which are going to happen. I'd say the most interesting, like, popular fiction to look at is something like The Expanse. So you can see how they're pretty good on their science, and the Belters are a little bit different because they've grown up in microgravity. That's a really interesting concept. The Martians are completely different as well, and the Earth people are different. That's interesting. Ultimately, if you want to go into deep space and you really want to explore the universe, I don't think humans are going to really be able to do that. I think you'll have proxies, you'll probably have artificial intelligence will probably go out and do that in the future. That's probably the evolution state of the human being. I think there is a book, there's a kind of a cool book called The Bobbiverse. There's a collection of books. They're really good as well. But the guy he's hot on his science. So I would say watch The Expanse, read or listen to The Bobbiverse, listen or read Andy Weir's Hail Mary, and these give you nice ideas about where humans might be going.
Thank you very much.
I think there's a couple of more questions.
Yeah, just strolling through. I might come back to some of these by typing in a bit. Let's see if there's anything which is useful for everyone. So you saying astronauts in space only need time to adjust to vestibular changes caused by the absence of gravity, or it needs an active solution? Yeah, I mean, so the adaptation that happens immediately is that after, well, days to a week or something like that, like I said earlier, your cerebellum learns which it shouldn't trust. So it shuts off your vestibular system, basically. So you become far more reliant on touch and on your eyes and things like this. And, you know, astronauts don't really care about what's up and down and stuff like that. It doesn't really matter when you get up there. So yeah, I mean, you basically switch it off. If you go into bursts of artificial gravity, you're gonna get your vestibular system going again. I think you could have some issues. But again, if you do it every day, your body will probably adapt, and you probably realize that we shouldn't be doing that. And similarly, if you were always in some kind of centrifuge, you'd probably be okay. You wouldn't have that Coriolis illusion because you would get used to it. The problem comes, if you remember, if it's inconsistent. So if you keep stopping and starting it and it all becomes a bit random, your body's going to find it very difficult to adapt. And so you really might have ongoing problems, and that's where the deep brain stimulation, kind of turning off certain nerves, has probably got some merit. But some of that's a bit science fiction-y at the moment. Right. I guess the final one I'll answer in front of everyone, because everyone else, I'll just type my answers to you guys in a bit. Do you think we are stretching the human body a bit too much by spending a long time in space? It kind of depends on what your outcome is. I mean, you do stretch the human body an awful lot, and there are long-term impacts of it, but is that a bad thing? Some people are happy to have those impacts. You know, what is your life worth? What do you want to do with your life? And where is the space industry going? Well, to start with, it's probably going to go to like Branson and that kind of stuff, so suborbital flights. And to be honest, there really isn't much of a long-term impact there, because you're only going to be floating around for 15 to 30 minutes. So that's okay. But when you start doing deep space stuff, this stuff does become really interesting. And we do stretch the body, but we do need to figure out the way forward, because it is probably going to be an inevitable